pushed here now this recording. So I type Avogadro in that terminal, I press enter. It will take a while until Avogadro opens. Right? And if you don't see it, you will find it in your task lines down here. So I click there, then it is on my screen, I drag it over, and you find this window, right? There's a black part, this is where your space is, and on top here are a couple of tools. Now this one here is already selected, it's the draw tool. And then you look on the left side, it's a draw setting. You have selected the element carbon, the bond order is single bond, and it is adjusting the amount of hydrogen atoms. So I normally want to have more control about my setup, so I deactivate that by default. Now we are interested in the hydrogen molecule. So we select hydrogen here, and then I go on that window. Where's my space? And then I click once. I've created one hydrogen atom. Right? I move the cursor. I click second time. I've created a second hydrogen atom. If I want now to form a bond, I click one atom. And I drag it to the other atom. Okay? So now the thing is, you can do stupid things, like that. Okay? Or like that, it's, there is no limit for you to do crazy things here. So whatever you do is, don't forget your basic physics or chemistry. Hydrogen has one electron, right? So they will form one bond, a single bond with another hydrogen atom. Okay? So now you remember that in our quantum expresso input, it's a text file, right? So we can't take that picture into the quantum expresso input easily. So we need to find a way around it. There we go to extension. And forget about the first two sections here. The third one is a couple of available tools to prepare input files for other quantum chemistry packages. UpperNet, that is what the course used last time. Gaussian is very powerful, but we need to pay for a license, so we don't have access to that. Okay? And NWChem, there were a couple of issues this year, right? So I couldn't resolve them. There's some library issues again, I guess, so the program is not reliable for us at the moment. So we don't use that one, but it can be used. It's very nice if it's working. The thing is, we do not find quantum expresso here, right? Okay, but we are actually only interested to find the coordinates, because we have the atomic positions block in the UpperNet input. The first element, the first entry is the element, the second one is the X position, and the Y position, and the Z position. So we need to find something that is similar. Right? So we go, for example, to the Gaussian tab here, click Gaussian, and we see now there's another window opening that has some setups that are available for a particular Gaussian run. But if you go down here, you find something that reminds you on the quantum expresso input for Cartesian coordinates. And that is the element, X position, Y position, Z position. So we can copy that, right? Okay, so I copy that. I cut it. Cut it is also okay. So what I recommend you to do then is maybe use a text editor in your Windows machine or Linux machine, because sometimes, depending on the configuration, if you close now that window, right, because you want to open the gedit in the terminal, right, to open your quantum expresso input, However, when you close now Avogadro, what you just copied is deleted in memory. So you have nothing to paste anymore. So why don't we, let me see how we do that. Notepad, right? Notepad. Or I just open Word, File 2. So Word is opening. I create a new document. We can use also Notepad or whatsoever. I copy paste it in here, right? So I have that somewhere. I close that. Now I can close Avogadro. Why do you want to close Avogadro? Because it's open in the terminal, so you can't open anything else at the moment. So we close it. Close without saving. Okay. Now we can go to the folder where we have our calculations from last time. So there we had the hydrogen atom, right? And we had the in a big box calculation, and we had the calculation of the one-dimensional atomic chain. Just let me see. For some reason I can't see my hydrogen atoms, so I go to lecture 1. I'm here. So I have one input called in. That is a different one. Where's my hydrogen atom? So if there are too many files in your folder and you don't have an overview like me now, like I know, so you can have ls and then star on the multiplication sign and the end of the file, the extension you're looking for, and it gives you all the input files. So I have a few here. Let's start with the first one. So that is right. So that is my big box calculation. However, modified to one-dimensional atomic chain with one hydrogen atom inside here. So I can make a new directory now. H2 molecule. And then I copy my old input H2 there. I change into the directory. And now we can look at the input or modify it. So in the first lecture, we started an input from scratch, right? We started with an empty text file and then put all the inputs inside there step by step. In practice, I'm not sure if anybody is doing that in a day-to-day research business kind of daily life. What you normally do is you look up one of your old inputs and then you modify that to your will, right? Because you can do quite some errors, so it's safer to start with something that worked before. Anyhow, that's what I do. So we need to modify that a bit. We have the control block. And the first thing that I change is I put a 2 here, indicating I have a H2 molecule now. The step numbers, that doesn't concern us so far, because here we have only a self-consistent field calculation. By the way, if you want to make a comment, you can do that with the apostrophe and then write the text here. Then in the system blocks, we describe a bit more details of the calculation. The number of bands is 5. In the hydrogen molecule, we have 2 electrons. They will will either occupy the same orbital, or if they're not at the ground state, maybe they occupy a higher one, that is an excited state. But that would be like two different states. Okay, we give 5, so there's a sufficient amount of empty bands inside, so that 2 electrons find space to occupy. So 5 is good. The rest, the number of atoms, of course, now is 2. The type of atoms is still 1 because we have the same element. It's the homoelemental material, basically, or hydrogen molecule. The A cut, the energy cutoff of the wave function, we did last time in the convergence test. And we saw the convergence around 41 Röntgen. So that is okay, so 49 might be a safe choice. And the unit is Röntgen. Smearing is okay. We don't need to be that tight with the convergence threshold. So we keep that there. Now the cell parameters. Do you remember when we saw convergence of the total energy with an increasing amount of cell size, of cell volume? Do you remember the value? It was around 10-ish, 10 angstrom, right? Now due to the periodic boundary conditions, if we put in another atom, the minimal distance to the nearest neighbor atom in a neighboring unit cell will be smaller. And we are going to put 2 hydrogen atoms inside the box and then stretch the bond. And so we increase the bond more and more and more and more and more to see how the dissociation curve will look like. Right? When we destroy basically the molecule, taking the parts, the individual parts apart. We said 10 angstrom is good for a single atom big box calculation. If we now have 2 atoms inside and we want to take them apart by 2 angstrom, we need a box size of 20 angstrom. Right? Because that will result in the same kind of minimal distance then. Is that clear? Or shall I draw a angstrom? Shall I draw a little drawing? 20. No, this one was good. So when we have a single atom big box calculation, and this distance here is 10 angstrom, then we now, due to the periodic boundary condition, here's another 10 angstrom distance, right? And this distance here is 10 angstrom too. If we increase the box size, the energy converged, meaning, well, that is actually where the atom loses track, right? Loses the side of the other atom in that box. So there's no interaction between these 2 atoms. If we now start to have, right, a similar box size, and we put the hydrogen atom molecule inside, let's say we start at half an angstrom distance, and then we slowly increase that, the binding distance. So we increase that from a half to, let's say, 5 angstrom. Can you see now what is the distance between this atom and that atom? And so we place this one at 0, so that is 5. This atom will be at 0, 2, but 0 is the same as 10. So we have the coordinate 0, 5, 10. But then if we increase the bond distance to 5 angstrom, we know that the atoms still see each other from the single box calculation, meaning there is a little bit of interaction. They're not completely blind towards each other. However, if we increase this distance then to 6 angstrom, this distance here, right, between neighboring unit cell reduces actually to 4 angstrom. So our maximal distance in the 10 angstrom box can be like 5 angstrom between two atoms for this system. If we want to reach a similar situation of separating atoms by at least 10 angstrom, we need to find a box. Now in all direction, that is 20 angstrom. Because when we have two atoms in that box, and we separate them by 10 angstrom, they have the same distance towards an atom in the neighboring unit cell. Okay? If you work with other systems, you might need to change them, right? If your molecule is 10 angstrom and you want to rip it apart, maybe you want to use 30 angstrom as a box size. If you are not interested in taking the molecule apart, then you don't need to think about that, right? You start with a molecule and you just make sure that you converge your result with respect to the unit cell size, and then you can work with that. Okay, so then we go on. We have the atomic species part, where we define the pseudopotential. Both atoms will use the same pseudopotential. They're both hydrogen atoms and they are equivalent. So we don't need to worry about that. And here comes now the part that actually is interesting for us, where we can place, you see, when I have nothing to paste here now. So I go back to my Word document, I copy, and then I should be able to paste. Right, okay. So that is a way that you can do that in the future when you're going to work with a benzene molecule. Because you don't want to put 12 atoms by hand inside, it will be a bit difficult. For now, however, because we are going to build the dissociation curve by hand, we go back to our input by hand. At the first point, what we want to choose. So we want now to try to compute a curve that shows the total energy of that system depending on the distance between the two atoms. That serves 2 points. The one is we get the full overview of the potential landscape for the R dependence. And the other point is we can find the ground state binding distance. We have done that for the one-dimensional atomic chain, right? Taking different box sizes, bringing the atoms closer to each other, minimizing the total energy for a particular distance, putting them a bit closer to see, okay, the energy goes up again and we get a Morse-type kind of potential. Now we do the same thing, but we keep the box size fixed and only change the distance between two atoms. So what shall we do first? You can choose. What number shall I put here now? What is a good choice? What do you think? Uh, 10 is okay. We can put 10, 10, 10. Then we go up diagonally, right? Like from 0, 0, 0 to 10, 10, 10. Right? it's a bit easier for us now to work with 10,0,0, for example. Otherwise, to compute the distance, we need to take this square of each element and then the square root of that. So it's easier when we look like that. Okay, 10, 10, 10. That is like the maximal distance we allow for this box size as a change in one Cartesian direction. The maximal distance would be 10, 10, 10. We want to keep it simple, so we only do it in x. Okay. The k-points, for all big box calculation, we have 1, 1, 1. And we still need to figure out, actually, in the course of the lecture, what is the meaning of the k-points, how do we handle them, right? And when actually do we need to change them. Okay, so that looks like a good input, so we save that now. Did you manage to follow that? Right, I showed you, right? And I hope that you also type, because then you have it, you practice at the same time, and if there's a mistake, we actually can figure out how to solve the mistake here in the lecture. Because when you go home and you find the mistake, it will take you maybe more time. And finding mistake in an input is actually very common, right? You find the input, you get some information from Quantum Expressor, but then you need to think about what does that mean, where's the mistake. So it's really for you to get familiar of running these calculations, right? Making effective use of your time. Okay, I save this one now. And then I can run Quantum Expressor, right? So run QE, and then my input file. What I normally do is I run it in the terminal first. Then you see all the output, okay? Like that. Then I know, okay, it's running, right? Perhaps you go until the first iteration of the self-consistent cycle. And when I'm confident, I press Ctrl-C to stop that. On the second go, I redirect, right, with a little arrow here, the output I just saw on the terminal into a text file. And since we are going to try different distances, I keep track of them by putting first my distance, right, 100, 10 times the amount in Armstrong, because you probably go to sub-Armstrong, right, 0.5, and I don't want to have the 0.1. So 100, and then what you can choose, right? You can put log here. That's what I do commonly, or you put out, or you put 10, or you put nothing, right? There's no strict rule. But you should not do something like this. So that can cause you some problems. So I run the calculation with the input written in in.in, and then I override my input with the output, meaning I lose my input file. And just that is the only thing you should not do, right? The rest is pretty up to you. Okay, and the last trick I want to show you is you put this sign at the end. That is the, I don't know, legal end or so, like that. What this do is it dumps now the calculation into the background, meaning the terminal is free for your use. If you don't do that, you need to wait until the calculation is finished. Now I need to wait, you see? And I stop that because I don't want to wait. I put that in the background, and I can continue using the terminal, although the calculation has not finished. How do I know the calculation is not finished? I now tail the output file with the follow command, -F. Oh, I was too slow, let's do that again. So I run the calculation, I do the tail, and then I can follow the output. although the thing is in the background. If I don't want to follow anymore, I press Ctrl C. If I want to follow again, I have the tail command. So I can monitor the progress of the calculation while I'm still able to do other things. Right? Go back, basically change back and forth. Okay, so what else? The job is done. Very good. So let me just point you to something else. How to check a quantum expressor output after structure optimization. First thing you need to check, job done, okay? Because we do a full structure optimization here, that's the only thing we do. Job done, right? So we look for job done. Job is done. You can open Vim or gedit. And then if you press, if you try it's escape the column and then G. Anyhow. Right, so you go to the bottom of your file and you find job is done. You can inspect the output. And important might be also that you look for things like convergence has been achieved. Convergence has been achieved, that is good. Job's done, that is good. And then, right, we said we want to build the curve of the total energy while changing the binding distance. So now we need to find the total energy of that calculation, of that system for this calculation. Do you remember how to do it? You had to do that in your home assignment, right? One way to do it is grab and the apostrophe and then the output file and you find one total energy. So that is minus 1.84 Rydberg. In this total energy is the all contributions, electron nuclei, and exchange and correlation effects. So that is really the total energy of your system. So what I would like you to do next is try different distances between the hydrogen atoms and build that curve. Let me see if I can. Right. And right, it should look something like this. So depending on the distance, you have a couple of flat points. They're not very interesting. But then it goes down, starting maybe at 4 angstrom until some value here. And then it goes up steep again. Right. So that is now the practice part. So try to build that curve and focus on the tail part that is very flat. Try to get a constant value here, right? Converge that value with the amount of distance between the two atoms. And try to find this value pretty accurately, okay?
So every time we need to start from the maximum amount of distance we can reach and then gradually decrease.
Here, no, you don't need to do that. You can just randomly choose values, that is okay.